Cassie's fingers twitched around the phone, Leah's warning looping in her mind. Don't go back. It's not safe anymore. She stood frozen, eyes darting around the apartment, trying to understand why it suddenly felt so foreign. The device sat on the table, its smooth surface catching the dim light. She couldn't shake the feeling that it was the source of everything crumbling around her, twisting her life, pulling at the threads of her reality. She paced, her thoughts spiraling. Who was watching her? Leah's tone had been urgent, desperate. Did Leah know something? Or worse, was she somehow involved? Cassie's memory felt fragmented, like snapshots of her life were missing or corrupted. She had no clear idea of how long this had been happening. Determined to find answers, she began rifling through her desk drawers, searching for anything she could piece together. As she dug through stacks of papers, research notes, and old projects, something caught her eye, a folder she didn't recognize, tucked between notebooks. She pulled it out, hands trembling. Inside were audio files, each labeled with dates and times she couldn't recall. Her heart raced as she clicked on the first one. The static crackled briefly before her own voice came through, cold and composed. I'm ready to proceed with the next phase. Let me know when it's time. Cassie recoiled, dropping the phone. Her voice. She didn't remember saying those words. She didn't even know what next phase meant. What was this? She played the file again, the sound sinking deeper into her gut. How could she not remember this? Had she been involved all along? The thought twisted her insides. She grabbed the device off the table, staring at it as if it held all the answers she needed. If she had been complicit, then the device wasn't just an accident. It had been given to her for a reason. But by whom? And why? Her pulse pounded in her ears. She needed to get out, now. She stuffed the device and her phone into her bag and bolted for the door. Cassie rushed down the street, her breath sharp and shallow in the cool evening air. Her mind raced, replaying the recording over and over. How could she not remember being part of whatever this was? The device had felt like an accident, like something she stumbled upon. But now, it seemed deliberate. Someone had planned this. Mark. She needed to find him. He might know something, anything that could help her piece this together. She turned the corner toward his apartment, her legs heavy from the adrenaline. Mark's new apartment was an unfamiliar place, a space that shouldn't exist in the timeline she remembered. But when she'd found him here after the last rewind, it had been real. She couldn't trust her memories anymore. They were slipping, bending, just like everything else. She reached the door and hesitated for a moment. What if he didn't remember her again? What if he was like the Mark from her last visit, confused and distant? She shook the thought from her mind and pressed the buzzer. After a long pause, the door clicked open. Mark answered, his face pale and exhausted, his eyes shadowed with a weariness she hadn't seen in him before. He looked like a man on the edge, his movements slow and deliberate. The sight of him sent a chill through her. Mark, Cassie's voice trembled as she stepped inside. We need to talk. He sat on the couch, his body sagging as if weighed down by something heavy. He didn't meet her eyes right away. When he did, there was a flicker of recognition, like he knew her, but not entirely. Cassie, he muttered, rubbing his forehead. You're here, but sometimes you're not. I can't keep track anymore. What do you mean? Cassie moved closer, her heart pounding. Mark, I've been using this device. It rewinds time, but something's wrong. Every time I use it, things change, and now I don't know what's real anymore. Mark's face twisted with confusion and pain. I don't know what's real either. You keep disappearing. I've been having these dreams, but they feel so real. You're there, but you're different. You're doing things, terrible things. I don't know who you are anymore. Cassie's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? What dreams? Mark's eyes met hers, filled with a deep, aching fear. They're not dreams, they're memories. Cassie stared at Mark, her heart sinking into a pit of dread. What do you mean? Memories? That's impossible. Mark cut her off, his voice hoarse, barely a whisper. Every time you disappear, something happens. I remember things I shouldn't. You change. But not just you. It's everything. It's like the world reshapes itself, and I'm left behind, watching it fall apart. Cassie's breath quickened. His words hit too close to home, mirroring the disjointed memories and strange gaps she'd been experiencing. I've been rewinding time. I've been trying to fix things, but Her voice trailed off, her thoughts racing. Mark, I think every time I rewind, I'm not just going back. I think I'm changing more than I realize. Mark's hands trembled as he rubbed his temples. I see things differently each time. I dream of versions of you. Versions I don't recognize. You're not you. Cassie's pulse quickened, fear creeping up her spine. Mark, I don't remember doing anything. The device, it's not just rewinding time. It's erasing things, warping things. But I don't know how far it goes. I don't know how to fix it. Mark let out a shaky breath, his fingers pressing harder into his temples. I can't keep track of what's real anymore. Sometimes I remember you so clearly, and other times, it's like you never existed. He paused, his eyes widening as though a terrible thought struck him. Maybe you're not supposed to be here. Cassie's mind raced, each of his words sending her deeper into a whirlwind of confusion and panic. Was she breaking reality just by being here? Had the rewinds ripped apart the fabric of time so much that she was unraveling her own existence? Mark, please, she whispered, grabbing his hand. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make it right. Mark's hand was limp in hers. He looked at her, his eyes hollow, and then he said something that froze her in place. It's happening again. Before Cassie could ask what he meant, Mark's body convulsed. He collapsed back against the couch, gasping for air, clutching his head as though something was tearing through his mind. Mark! Cassie knelt beside him, her voice thick with panic. What's happening? Mark, stay with me. But Mark's body seized, his breathing ragged, his eyes rolling back. It was as if something was ripping him away from her, like the universe itself was rejecting him. Cassie fumbled for her phone, dialing for help, but the line went dead before it could connect. Reality was unraveling around them. Cassie crouched beside Mark, her hands trembling as she pressed her fingers to his neck, feeling the faint, erratic pulse beneath his skin. Mark, stay with me, she whispered, her voice shaking. But his breathing was shallow and his body trembled violently. Her mind raced, grasping for any solution, any explanation that made sense. Was it the rewinds? Had she caused this? The device burned like a weight in her bag, as though it were responsible for everything falling apart. Maybe it was. Maybe she had gone too far this time. She couldn't stay here. She had to get help. Cassie stood and grabbed her phone again, only to find that the screen was glitching, the display warping and distorting before her eyes. The time on the phone flickered wildly, jumping back and forth between minutes and hours. Nothing made sense anymore. Mark groaned softly, and Cassie knelt beside him once more, her heart aching with guilt. She didn't know how to help him. She didn't even know how to help herself. Suddenly her phone buzzed, the sound sharp and jarring in the otherwise quiet room. She glanced at the screen, expecting it to be the emergency call reconnecting. But it wasn't. It was a message, from the same unknown number that had warned her before. You're running out of time. Cassie's blood ran cold. She stared at the message, her heart thudding in her chest. Who was this? And how did they know what was happening? She pressed back a sob and typed out a frantic reply. Who are you? What do you want? No response. Her thoughts scattered in 1,000 directions. The only person who might know what was going on was Leah. She had to find her. Cassie stood, giving Mark one last glance before rushing out of the apartment. She didn't want to leave him, but she had no choice. Leah's place was only a few blocks away. As she ran through the dimly lit streets, her mind replayed every strange, fractured memory, every time something had changed without her realizing it. She had been trying to control the chaos, but the more she tried to fix things, the worse they became. When she finally reached Leah's building, she burst through the door and raced up the stairs. She banged on the door, her heart pounding, until Leah opened it. But when Leah's face appeared, Cassie's breath caught in her throat. Leah looked calm, eerily calm. There was no fear, no panic, just a cold, detached expression that sent a shiver down Cassie's spine. Leah stood in the doorway, her expression flat, almost bored. Cassie's stomach churned as she stepped inside, trying to make sense of her friend's strange demeanor. Leah, something's wrong with Mark. I don't know what's happening, but I think it's tied to the rewinds. I think... Leah cut her off, her voice disturbingly calm. I know, Cassie. Cassie froze. You know? Leah nodded, stepping aside to let her in. Everything resets. You know that by now. No one ever really remembers what happens, do they? not even you. Cassie felt the ground tilt beneath her, her heart pounding. What are you talking about? Leah, you have to help me. Leah's eyes flashed with something unreadable, something cold. How many times have you rewound, Cassie? Do you even remember? You've lost count, haven't you? Cassie took a step back, her mind racing. How do you know about the rewinds? You're not supposed to. Leah smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. I remember more than you think. More than anyone else, apparently. Cassie's breath hitched. Leah's voice, her tone, everything about her felt wrong. Leah, what's happening to you? Leah shrugged, walking over to the table and picking up a notebook, flipping through its pages casually. What's happening to me? It's you, Cassie. You're the one pulling the strings. You've been doing it for a while now. You're just starting to realize it. Cassie's pulse roared in her ears. What are you talking about? I've been trying to fix things, to fix us, to fix Mark. Every time something goes wrong, I try to make it right. Leah turned to her, her gaze piercing. And every time you try to make it right, you make it worse. She tossed the notebook onto the table. Look at this. Cassie's hands trembled as she picked up the notebook, flipping through its pages. It was filled with notes, names, times, and dates, all written in her own handwriting. But she didn't remember writing any of it. At the top of the first page, in bold, capital letters, it read, "The experiment is complete. Stop now." Cassie felt the room spin. What is this? Leah crossed her arms, leaning against the wall. You already know. The device wasn't just for rewinding. It was an experiment. You're the subject, and now you've pushed it too far. Cassie's head swam, her vision blurring. No, this isn't right. I was never part of this. I didn't agree to. Leah's cold smile deepened. Didn't you? Cassie staggered back, her breath coming in shallow gasps as Leah's words sank in. The experiment is complete. Stop now. What experiment? What had she agreed to? I don't understand, Cassie whispered, her hands gripping the notebook tightly. Leah, I don't remember any of this. Why can't I remember? Leah's smile didn't falter. Because you rewrote it, Cassie. You rewrote everything. Every time something didn't go the way you wanted, you rewound it, erased it. But now, the device is fighting back. You've altered things too many times. The timeline is collapsing. Cassie's heart raced, her pulse roaring in her ears. The memories, the fragments, they had never been just mistakes. They had been erased. She had erased them. I didn't mean to. But you did, Leah interrupted. And now you can't fix it. It's too late. You've fractured everything beyond repair. Cassie's chest tightened, her thoughts spinning in a chaotic blur. She fumbled for the device in her bag, her fingers trembling as they brushed against its smooth surface. She had to try one last time, one last rewind to undo this mess. Leah's gaze darkened. Don't. Cassie hesitated, her hand frozen on the device. I have to. If I don't, everything falls apart. Leah took a step closer, her voice low and dangerous. If you use it again, you'll lose everything. Your memories, your life, everything will unravel. Cassie's breath caught in her throat. The weight of Leah's words pressed down on her, but the pull of the device was stronger. She couldn't let everything fall apart. She couldn't lose Mark, lose Leah, lose herself. Her fingers curled around the device, her decision made. But just as she raised it, ready to press the button, the screen lit up on its own. A countdown appeared, ticking down from 5 minutes. 5, 4:59, 4:58. The numbers blinked ominously, like a final warning. Cassie's heart stopped. What is this? Leah's voice was eerily calm. The device is shutting down. You've run out of time. Cassie's mind raced. She didn't know what would happen when the countdown hit 0, but she knew it wasn't good. She had to make a choice. Destroy the device now, or let it finish whatever it had started. But as the seconds ticked away, Cassie stood frozen, trapped in the decision that could end everything. 4:45, 4:44, 4:43.
This is the end of the episode. Thank you for listening. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel and check out our other stories. You can find the link to the next episode in the description below. What do you think about this episode? Let us know in the comment section below.